Hi everybody! The rest of the video that you're about to see is actually the first attempted episode I tried to make in probably August 2021. I had made a bunch of items to send off to my friends down in New Zealand and decided to record my first knitting podcast. Obviously I ended up uploading one a few weeks ago now, but this is the first one I had attempted last year, but ended up being too nervous to upload and didn't really start that whole train yet. So this video shows all of the items I ended up sending to New Zealand, and that's about it. So I'm going to repeat in the beginning all of the, I'm fluff and yarn stuffs and that kind of stuff. So just ignore that if you saw that in the first episode. Anyway, I hope you enjoy, and I hope I'm not talking too fast or saying too much. It tends to be a habit of mine. Hello everyone! My name is Stephanie. Welcome to my first ever knitting video. I apologize in advance if I talk too fast. I will do my best to talk at a reasonable pace, but no promises. I live on the west coast of Canada on a little island called Vancouver Island. It's really nice here. The weather's pretty much great most of the year. We do get a fair amount of rain, but we do avoid a lot of snow because we're surrounded by the ocean, which is wonderful. I do enjoy knitting. I've been knitting for most of my life, I guess, just on and off. Probably only making dishcloths because I was never that good. But then when COVID hit, all of my classes turned to online classes, and I figured that the teachers couldn't really see what I was doing behind the camera. So I started knitting again. And that's why I'm making this video, because I have a bunch of items that I'll be sending off to New Zealand, and I figured I would share them with people before I sent them off, just to have a little documentation of it. I really enjoyed everybody's videos throughout COVID, and even before that, I guess, from just back watching people's YouTube accounts of all the items that they've been making and all the yarn they have. So I figured I would just throw a couple more videos out there for more people to watch if they feel so. So I'm Fluffandyarnstuff on Instagram and just Fluff and Yarn Stuff on Ravelry, though I don't use that very much. There's just no S on the end of that because of the character count limit. But what you gonna do? I would like to post more on Ravelry, but once again, no promises. I tend to kind of just make stuff and move on, so I don't really want to spend the time documenting too much what I've done, especially because most of the time I don't really use a pattern, so that's a bit of an issue sometimes. Anyway, I'm about to send this package off to my friends in New Zealand. I was traveling there for about a year, and 6 months of it was on a farm. It was 1,300 dairy cows. It was really nice, grassy rolling hills everywhere. And I got along really well with my, supervisor and his wife and his kid. So I decided that I would make them some stuff now that I've been back in Canada for a few years. The first item that I made very shortly after I left New Zealand. I just made this little cat for Amanda's daughter, and I hadn't shipped it for a few years, and it's a good thing because I have a bunch more items that I wanted to ship out to them. So they actually just had their daughter Brooklyn just before I was about to leave, so she was quite new to the world. I made this little cat that Amanda sent me a picture of, and I found the pattern online. Just got a little bow. It's just a little amigurumi, just a crocheted thing. It was some sort of cotton acrylic blend. I can't remember exactly which one. I have since lost the labels. I do get most of my yarn off of the internet from people that are de-stashing for whatever reason. Victoria is sort of known as the city of newlyweds and nearly deads. Just affectionate term from the people that live there. There's a lot of newlyweds and young people there because it's a high university population city. There's the University of Victoria, there's Camosun College, there's some trade colleges. So you get a big wide variety of young people flocking to the city because it's so nice out all the time, and they have these nice universities. But then because of the mild climate and the lack of snow, we do get a lot of more elderly people as well, hence the newlyweds and nearly deads, which can be good for knitters, I guess, and crocheters, because then you get people who, for whatever reason, can't knit anymore, whether it be some sort of mental decline as they age, or they just get arthritis. And I've gotten the vast majority of my yarn from these people who just want to see somebody else using it, and so they'll sell like hundreds of dollars worth of yarn for maybe $50 or something, or just yarn at severe discounts compared to what it would normally cost. So that's where I've gotten most of my yarn, so I apologize in advance if it's not available anymore, or it doesn't come in the colors anymore if you wanted to copy whatever I was doing. Anyway, this guy was really cute. I liked it. It's pretty, hopefully durable. I did make a cow for their son just before I left New Zealand, and I just made him another cow that I will show you soon. Anyway, that one, I actually used the exact same yarn to make a little purse for her as well. So it's kind of good that I waited a couple of years because I learned how to do mosaic crochet, which is really, really fun. So I've got these cool patterns that I figured out. I just honestly, this was the first thing I ever made. I just made a big rectangle and then I decided that I would tie the ends together, and it worked really well. On the back I've got kind of a bit of a plus sign pattern and some waves, I guess you'd call them. I don't know. It works really well. And then I just put a really long strap with these, it's just 2 pieces so she can tie it together at whatever height she'd like. And her little cat fits inside her purse. Apparently she really likes pink and purple, so this will be great for her once she gets it. And then for their son, I already made him one cow that matched his pet calf, but we found this other pattern. Once again, Amanda sent it to me. I just had to make it. It's a little bit messed up because it's been shoved in the box ready to be shipped before I decided to make this video. It's called The Cow and Calf by Laura Sutcliffe, I believe. I'm not a huge fan of crochet patterns in general because you kind of have to know what your stitches look like to be able to figure out where you're putting the new stitches. Whereas with knitting, it's like what's on your needles is on your needles. So this was a really well written out pattern though. I didn't get lost even once. She has lots of stitch counts and lots of amazing pictures partway through, so you can kind of compare what you've done to what she had done. And I think the best part about this one, a little bit rude, is if you open up the back, there's a little pouch and there's a little baby cow, which I thought was really cute. I was gonna make 2, but I never kind of got around to it. And you're supposed to make this white, but I kind of figured that if it's supposed to be a uterus, maybe it should be pink. And then I just sewed little buttons on it. Yeah, it was honestly, it was great. Using all the stuffing that I inherited from my grandma. And I just made this out of cotton because I figured it would be nice and durable for farm children. I just used Bernat Handicrafter. I do have one label. Not sure if the camera will really focus on it. It's just Bernat Handicrafter, just a regular cotton yarn. I just used the standard colors for the brown and for the pink of the udder and the nose. But for the body, the only yarn that I found that was the same size was very, very white. I did try using another brand that was more of an off-white color that was closer to what a cow might look like, but the sizes didn't quite match, and I made the calf and it looked ridiculous, so I decided I would dye my own yarn a little bit. Never really done that before, but what can go wrong, right? So I got this extremely white and I just dyed it with some coffee because nobody in my house drinks coffee, but we've had this one like package of coffee for probably like 20 years in the cupboard, so I don't think anybody would want to drink it. Anyway, I decided, made that executive decision. I just took this plain white, I made it into a giant skein, and I dyed it, and then obviously washed it out as many times as I could to hopefully not have it leach into their washing machine. And that's the difference that I got. So it's not like a crazy difference, but it's enough that like this looks like snow and this looks like it could be a cow that might have rolled in some poop or something. Who knows? Anyway, so that's how I got that color. Just straight coffee. Let it sit there for a couple hours, and then once it was cool enough to touch, then I just washed it all out as much as I could. And that worked really well. Hopefully he'll like it. It's a little bit weird shaped because I'm not the best at crocheting, but it was a lot of fun. Then the next items I actually made, Amanda likes having a little bun on top of her head all the time, so I made her this toque that has a little hole in the top so that she can, you know, like stick her hair out the top, little ponytails or whatever. I just made it just with a regular honeycomb stitch, and I made a double brim, so I kind of do like playing around with new techniques, I guess. And in somebody else's video, I'd heard of a provisional cast on, so I YouTubed how to do that. And I just made it a double brim, so this brim is just 2 layers wide. Did a provisional cast on, and then once I got up to where I wanted to start doing the cabling, I joined them together, and then I kind of just knitted 2 together. I think I did knit 2 together, knit 2 together, knit 1, knit 2 together, knit 2 together, knit 1. So since it was a double count of stitches, it did decrease the amount from that, but it's still a bigger count than the actual brim was, because the first toque I ever made that had cable patterns in it, I didn't increase for the cables, and it's like a little slooping because cabling makes the stitch count shrink in a little bit. Anyway, I also made this little, you can't focus on it, that's okay, little hand knitted by Stephanie tags. I made actually a Ravelry board for my dad out of leather, so I had to figure out how to use all the software, and then I used one of my friend's laser printers, and it was actually a really fun day. I'd spent so much time making this Ravelry board and making all these little tags to use the offcuts of the leather, and then we just went over there and kind of printed things for a day, and he showed us how all of his machines worked, and it was a hoot. Now I have an entire drawer, well, small drawer, full of these little tags, and I have ones that'll wrap around the bottom and ones that are more of a rectangular shape. So it's just a nice little added touch to items that I'll be gifting to people. And it's just made out of vegetable tan leather, which is like the more sustainable leather. It does cost more, but it's also not toxic to the people that are handling it, which I thought was kind of important. And since she does have a daughter's about 3 years old now, I made a little mini version for her as well. It's just the exact same thing, just like a double brim. I just swatched, honestly, and then just kind of went for it and hoped for the best, and they both turned out, which is great. So it also has a hole in the top for a bun, so they can be little mini me's and match each other, which I thought would be great. It does get kind of cold on the farm in the winter, as you'd expect, but you also still have to get the cows at like 3 something in the morning. Actually, before I talk about that, I'll talk about the yarn. This was just like the Cascades 220 Heather. This is very old, I'm assuming, because it was with a bunch of yarn that I got from an older lady. And most of the yarn that I had looked up was discontinued and not made anymore, but I do think Cascades does still make this yarn. It's just like 220 yards per 100 grams, Peruvian Highland wool, and Amanda loves pink. It's not my favorite color, but she does, and this has nice pinks and purples in it. So I figured that would be a nice sort of feminine-ish touch to add to that and keep her warm. Hopefully she's not allergic to it. Fingers crossed. Anyway, the next items that I made for her husband. And since he has to get the cows really early in the morning, I made him some balaclavas. It was just same thing as before. I just did a bunch of sample swatching just to see what pattern I liked and what the gauge I was getting. I think I made these on 4mm needles. I tend to make most of my stuff on 4mm needles. It just kind of, they work with my hands really well. I'm sure everybody has their own little favorite. Let me know if you have a favorite size, because I definitely enjoy 4mm needles. So this is just kind of the outer layer. I just did like essentially a very elongated buttonhole to make the face hole, and then I made the front longer than the back, just with short rows. I think I did wrap and turn because I was lazy, which is great, and it's not going to matter because it's going to felt because it's 100% wool, and it'll be most likely covered in cow poop at 1 or 2 points in its life. So just for the top, I did a combination of, I think it was just knit 2, purl 2, just like a ribbing, but then every row I moved it over one, so it kind of made a bit of a spiral. And then once I got down to the main part, it's the exact same thing, knit 2, purl 2, but then every 2 rows I moved it over one. So it kind of gave it a bit of a diagonal thing. I didn't want it to be curling up too much on the outside. And then I also made an inner layer for him as well, which is just plain stockinette because I wanted it to go by really fast. So the front does curl a little bit, and then I just put some ribbing at the bottom. So hopefully that fits his big head. I'll show you. It's got a lot of room, so we can kind of tuck it underneath his helmet. Then once he is dealing with gates or something like that, he can pull it down so it's not covering his face as much. I hope it works. Fingers crossed. Worst comes to worst, they just have a fluffy toy for the cat to play with, I guess. And same thing as before, I made a smaller one for his son, because his son also rides motorbikes and stuff. It is a little bit smaller, but I think it'll stretch out as he grows. But just the exact same thing, but I didn't do the difference in the top. This one is just the knit 2, purl 2 shifted over. And then when he starts getting the cows, because I think he's 7 now or 9, I can't remember. But once he starts getting the cows, then he can wear his as well, because he also motorbikes and he's really good at it. He's really good at everything. Same thing before. I just used yarn that I got out of a yarn haul off of somebody's destashing from getting arthritis or something. So this was just Patton's Classic Wool. It says it's merino, but it's not like the super soft merino that we're all kind of used to in today's day and age. It's a bit more rustic. It kind of feels very similar to the Peruvian Highland wool, but this one's not super scratchy. So it's kind of like a really soft wool, but not as buttery soft as some merinos that I've knitted with before. This was just a great color. I think I have like a bunch of balls of this. I'm going to be using some of it in a blanket that I plan on crocheting. If I ever get around to starting that, it might be a little bit hard to gain motivation in the summer heat. But we have fans, so that'll definitely help. The gauge for it is 20 stitches by 26 rows for 10 centimeters, and it says to use 4.5mm needles, so I was close enough. I do tend to go down compared to what they say. I just always swatch and just see what fabric I like best and then try and just go with it. So there's that. There are a couple more things that I made for them, mostly like 20 or so of these water bombs. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of them before. I had honestly never heard of them before at all, but Amanda messaged me asking if I could make her some because they had some friends that they tried it at a birthday party and apparently it was a lot of fun. And it's a lot easier to not have to pick up all the little plastic bits off the ground, especially when you're living on a farm and the cows, you don't want the cows eating plastic balloons. So this was just made out of Bernat blanket yarn. It's really fluffy, really soft, 100% polyester, I think. Yeah, 100% polyester. You get 220 yards for 300 grams in a ball, and I think it costs like 12 Canadian dollars. And it was just Bernat blanket. It's really, really soft. And it comes in a bunch of different colors. So I did have a little bit of this left from a pillowcase I had made a very long time ago. I think it's the same yarn. I'm not 100% sure though. It feels the same. It's probably the same. I just crocheted these. There's lots of different patterns online. I think I just made like a magic loop and then made like 6 or 8 stitches, just single crochet, and then doubled those, and then kind of just did a few rows of double crochet. I did a double crochet increase and then double crochet following, and then double crochet decrease, and then half double crochet decrease, I believe. And then I kind of tightened it as much as I could, and then did a row of expansion again, so it kind of made a bit of a water balloon shape. And apparently they work really well. I did watch this one girl's video, and she got a bunch of kids to test them, and it was a really great video. But they do hold onto the water just well enough that when you dunk them in water, it holds onto it, and then when you throw it, once you splat it on the wall, it'll kind of release most of its water. So they're like very fast refill compared to regular water balloons, and involve less setup and less cleanup, and they'll probably last a lot longer than the equivalent amount of weight in just water balloons. So slightly better for the environment, hopefully. But I just made them like an entire box of all these different colors. So maybe they'll have teams. I don't know. I ended up actually using a bunch of the other yarn to make slippers as well. I made one of my friends a pair, I made my roommate a pair. I don't know, it comes in a very large ball, so you can make a lot of things with it. I ended up making probably another 50 or so of those water balloons to give to one of my workmates as well, because she has kids. So I definitely got my money's worth out of those few balls, and everyone's going to be happy with how that went. Anyway, around the same time, I was also going for a car ride at some point. So I like to make these little coin pouches. I just make it out of some sort of cotton thread. Once again, something I got in a D-stash from somebody. You're going to notice a trend here if you keep watching my channel and if I keep making videos. Most of the stuff is from D-stash. So I kind of just end up making some sort of circular base, and then do some rows of singles or doubles, and then something to make it go by faster. And then eventually I will make probably a single crochet double back chain, so that I can use that as the drawstring. And these make really good coin pouches, or for like chapstick or keys or something like that you don't want to take up a lot of space, but you keep losing them. So my boyfriend has been using his for change for a really long time. I had one and I gave it away or lost it, I think. So maybe I'll take this one. And it just makes a nice little bag. Whereas if I make it with thicker yarn, which obviously makes it go by faster, then it kind of just ends up being this bulky thing that I don't end up using. So I just use that for maybe stones or something that I have that are really pretty. Yeah, so just this little bag. Make a lot of them. They're quite fast. And then another thing that I made my very first pair of socks this last year. I didn't follow a pattern, just a trend, but I also probably should have. I just kind of Googled what most people did and went with it, and it seemed to have worked really well. I just did the standard toe increase from what most people were saying online, which is to increase in 4 different places every other round. Yeah, that's what we did. And I don't know, it worked. They fit really well. I've worn them not too many times because it takes me a while to get around to hand washing them, to be honest. But they fit really well. I've never had hand knitted socks before, so this was really great. I really enjoyed it. And especially considering it was my first pair and I didn't follow a pattern, and I literally just gauge swatched and went for it. I made the ball of the foot and the bottom of the heel with 2 strands of yarn, so it would be a bit more durable because that's where I tend to wear mine out, instead of on the back like some people do. I do, depending on if I'm wearing gum boots. If I'm working on farms, I do tend to wear the backs out more, but in regular shoes it's the bottoms. This is some cotton bamboo silk blend that I also don't have the tag for because it was just written on a piece of paper or something. So yeah, I just made a couple of these. I only had enough yarn to make ankle socks, and obviously I ran out of the green. That's why there's some blue at the top there. But they fit really well. And I did the Sweet Tomato Heel by Cat Stevenson or something. It's Cat's Sweet Tomato Heel. And it kind of, instead of having more of like a pointy heel sort of structure like lots of them do, you kind of do like half of the increases and then you do another half the increases, so it makes it a bit more rounded. That just sounded really appealing to me because I had no idea what I was doing and I just kind of went for it. And it actually fits really, really well. And I was kind of worried about having to pick up stitches if I was going to do like the heel flap and gusset or any of those variations, and how that would turn out. So this way you actually keep all of your stitches on the needles. She has a short video online, but I know she also sells the pattern in a book, I think, on a bunch of different sock patterns. But basically you take, I think, about 1/3 of the stitches and leave them in the front, and then you take the back half of it and you're kind of going back and forth doing your short rows. And I just kind of winged it from her video and it worked really, really well. It was a great video, so thank you, Kat, for making this Sweet Tomato Heel. I definitely love these socks. I ended up starting to make another pair for myself because I was like, yeah, I'll have a wool pair. It'll be really good. But the only problem is I really don't like pink. So these are going to be for my ex-roommate. I just moved. And I was starting to knit them on hikes, and I got this far and realized I'm not going to like these socks. It's another for Denny. I originally got into knitting and hiking when my boyfriend his hip wasn't working super well. So while he was doing physio and we were going on slower, shorter walks, I started knitting like socks and sort of dishcloths and stuff, things that if you drop a stitch, it's not the end of the world. And it kind of was a good way to pace myself as well, because I tend to like going out for a good paced walk or run or hike. And then if I ended up knitting, then I could be at more of a similar pace to him, which worked out really well. And just for the top of it, I did sort of a bit of a seed stitch. I'm not really sure what this is called. I just did knit 1 purl 1 across the top, and then the next row I would just knit normal. And then the row after that, I would knit 1 purl 1, but 1 offset to what I'd been at. So if you know what that's called, please let me know. I just like how it turned out. Gives it kind of a little bit of a texture. It looks a little bit messy, but I think I like it. So I'm just about to turn for the heels. I don't think I've started yet. I haven't picked these up in a couple of weeks because I was moving and there was a lot of stuff going on. Yeah, so that's about it. Thanks for watching my video. I hope to hear